All right, so it looks like we've reached a critical mass, so we can go ahead and get things started. So welcome everyone. I'm Joe, and I'm the Active Claremont president for the 2022 year. Thanks for joining us for this presentation. And tonight we have Jim Keith as well as some other participants, and we're going to talk a little bit about some of the activity that's been taking place down in the southern portion of our city. It's been a hot topic for a little while now, and it seems like it keeps continuing to get hotter and hotter as time goes on and as crime continues to go up. So thanks for joining us. And as I stated, this meeting will be recorded. It'll be up on our YouTube channel probably within the next couple of days or so. The chat is open. If anybody has any questions at any time and they don't want to interrupt, you can just go ahead and type a question to chat. And depending on how long we go, hopefully we'll have some time for some Q&A. So if anybody has a question or a comment, you're more than welcome to pop it in the chat. And when we get to a good spot, happy to read it out loud and we can all have some conversation or answer some questions. A couple of announcements, just to make really quick, 2 announcements coming up. This Saturday is trash pickup. So if you are looking to volunteer, get outside and spend a morning collecting some trash with us, we do sponsor the Project Adopt initiative for Baseline in our stretch of Claremont. So we will be out there at 8 a.m. on Saturday to pick up some trash along the Baseline corridor, and any extra hands is greatly appreciated. And we meet at 8 o'clock at St. Luke's Church. That's on the corner of Indian Hill and Baseline. The other thing I want to let everybody know tonight is that we are going to be having a holiday gathering. It is in the works. Most likely we're going to be probably doing it at Round Table Pizza, assuming they have availability. So I'll send out an email probably next week with some more details and information regarding that. And of course, that's open to all members. Come hang out, say hello, grab some pizza with us, and enjoy the festive mood. So without any further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Jim. And Jim, you can go ahead and get started with your presentation. Feel free to share your screen, and we can get started.
Thank you very much. All righty. Well, I am speaking for the Committee for Safe and Healthy Housing. And thank you so much for letting us address you and trying to get our thoughts organized for this meeting. It was very helpful. So once I figure out, there we go. So our committee was actually formed back in 2006 by my wife before I retired. And we were concerned with crime and bullying behavior in the apartment communities in town. And so we focused on the larger ones, which are 10 more units, and there's 30 of those in Claremont. And by the way, we were told that any plan that we had to apply to the entire city equally. It couldn't be just in one area. And so we took a look at the rate of serious crime, which was part 1 crimes, plus vandalism, because that was being used to threaten residents from reporting what was happening in the apartments. So we took the number of crimes during a year and we divided it by how many apartment units there were in all of those apartments in that vicinity. And you can see here that there's the green line, and that represented the 9 apartment complexes in South Claremont. And then the blue line, that represented all the rest of the apartments in Central and North Claremont. And you can see that the ratio of crime per unit was 4.6 times as high in South Claremont. So the green started out 4.6 times as high as the blue. And as the program worked over the years, you can see that last year in 2021, the green has dropped quite a bit. The blues remain fairly stable. That ratio, I think right now is about 1.7. So we're happy with that. It wasn't just a matter of location. A lot of people said, well, you know, with apartments where they are, that's just going to be the high rate of crime. So we were happy with that progress. Okay, so now we jump forward to our current concern, and it's the I-10 motels. And it's more than just the prostitution and traffickers. These issues are in front of commissions now and in the next few months. So the first main issue is that the motels at the I-10 are hosting traffickers, also called pimps, and they're scheduling sex workers to operate out of our Claremont motels. And they're part of a trafficking network where the prostitutes actually are moved from place to place across the country. Now, despite many recent arrests, neighbors continue to observe multiple pimps operating out of Motel 6, for example. The next issue is the health code violations that are reported in guest reviews online on Yelp, Google, TripAdvisor, and Booking.com that we read, and they haven't been investigated by our city staff or anyone else. A year ago, the LA County Health Department inspected only 5 rooms at Motel 6, and I'm told that typically they allow management to pick the rooms because they're empty. Next issue is buildings and landscaping that have not been maintained. Strong corrective action was recently imposed on Motel 6 by the Architectural Commission, but Motel 6 is appealing that to the City Council on Tuesday of next week. And lastly, the proposed hotel-motel ordinance that we had asked for, but which was redesigned by the city staff, skips the enforcement issue, which is essential, and contains counterproductive elements. So that's an overview of what I'll be talking about. So prostitution of young people continues 1 full year after our police department reported at the police commission that the numbers are beyond anything anyone has ever seen in Claremont. The types of prostitution that we see include what's called street prostitution, with prostitutes picking up Johns on the street, committing a sex act in a car, and then being driven back to the motel. The second type is meet-up appointments, where the prostitute waits somewhere and the John drives up and they get in the car. And we know someone who actually went out and chased a John off saying, no, you're not doing that near my business. And then the next one, I call it a drive-up brothel, and that's where one of the people in this meeting tonight just drove to Motel 6, pulled his car in backwards and just waited. He saw another guy like him. A young girl comes out and talks to him. She goes back to the apartment, to the, not the apartment, the motel room. And then the guy follows her. And next thing you know, there's somebody at his door. Are you looking for someone? So I'm calling that a drive-up brothel. Okay, number 3, the pimps stay over long periods of time at the motels, and they hang out in their cars in the motel parking lots, supervising the activity. They watch the Johns drop off their prostitutes, then they go to the prostitute's room to collect the money, and they drive the prostitute back out onto the streets. So that has been observed by neighbors as recently as 2 days ago. Okay, Motel 6 was actually using a website paid for by the Claremont Chamber of Commerce to advertise sex work. So I'd like to show you that. So here we go with Discover Claremont. It's a way to attract people to Claremont. If you look for where to stay, you see that we've got the Claremont Lodge and Motel 6 in the drop-down menu. Here's a very inviting picture of a pool filled with water. You got trees in the background, healthy. And then here's the description. In the first sentence there, it says that features one of the Southern California's finest tennis facilities available year-round with 8 lighted championship tennis courts. Amenities include a large swimming pool, large grass lawn with picnic tables. And then Motel 6 management chose a couple of reviews to add. And this was the end of September, September 28. I did these screen grabs. The last one there, let me read it to you, by Victor Cruz. I had a really good time. Nice room. And the next door, I make some friends. White girl and a black girl. Very nice girls. Definitely, I'm coming back to this Hotel 6. Now, it's enough to know that somebody wrote that. But then just think of this. The manager of this place is advertising on a Claremont Chamber of Commerce website to get more people to come to his motel, and he chose that. Okay, so prostitution attracts drug and violent crime, as well as high policing costs to the city. So in the past 2 years, our Claremont police have arrested 122 people at the address of Motel 6, and 247 people, almost double, in the area, including American to the I-10 freeway, and from Indian Hill right over to Drake. So a very tight area right around Motel 6. In the same past 2 years, our police have completed the following number of service calls: 1,619 to the property itself, that address, a total highlighted here, 3,036 service calls in the area, including American to the I-10. Now, unbelievably, the new hotel motel ordinance has proposed that Claremont will change its municipal code to prohibit the city from using the service call numbers in any court action against a motel. And I'm wondering just which motel lawyer proposed that one. So we've had some positive action to deter prostitution. City Councilman Sal Medina and Ed Reese, along with City Manager Adam Puri and Police Chief Fate, met with LA County District Attorney Gascon to request his help dealing with our problem. In the most recent enforcement detail reported in the Courier, 8 members of the LA County undercover team helped arrest 15 Johns and 1 pimp. That's great support. The new policy of publishing the names of all Johns in the police department press releases should help deter Johns who live locally and know about the new policy. But men are driving from far away to get to Claremont for sex workers. And you can see where they live now. The pimp should be charged with a felony because he'd been arrested for the same thing before, but he was released on bail. Now, if he does not show up in court next week, he will have a no bail warrant for his arrest, and our police department will have to catch him again. But I was told that this approach of catching someone recruiting police officers disguised as prostitutes has sent a number of pimps to jail. And so this is very significant, picking up this fellow for, and as you remember, he was driving wrong way at the traffic lane, shouting at these women. They were actually, he was very hostile and aggressive towards them for soliciting in his turf. And lastly, you've got Councilman Sal Medina's idea to install ALPR cameras at the stoplight entrance to Motel 6 and to the auto center. And that is so popular that an auto dealer has offered to help pay for it. So the businesses are well aware of what's going on, and I would say when they're helping to pay for the corrective action, they're concerned. Okay, now here's the second issue that's going on apart from prostitution, and that's deterioration of health standards in the motels. They're not providing maid service in rooms with longer stay residents. In fact, Motel 6 tells you that on their website. There's many disgusting guest reviews warning of the motel's conditions and deterioration. I'm going to show you a couple. A member of our Committee for Safe and Healthy Housing observed a room at the Knight's Inn while trying to deliver Meals on Wheels, and she concluded that they could not ask their volunteers to deliver to the Knight's Inn. She's with us today, and I hope when I get done, she'll tell you about that. We've heard no evidence that our city staff has taken action to call in a certified health inspector to investigate any specific complaint about health conditions in the motels. So here's one review from Yelp. It goes back to April 11th. I checked into the hotel in the daylight, and the hotel seemed dirty and sketchy. When we got into the room, it smelled like very strong chemical deodorizer. almost choking. We aired it out and went to dinner. Came back at night and saw two nearly naked prostitutes walking near our room, and a room that looked like they lived there. There were parties and cars that spilled into rooms of dangerous looking people. Last paragraph. I've stayed at many Motel 6s, and 95% of them have been clean and good values. One other time it was dirty, but not dangerous. Please read other reviews of this hotel, and you will see that others agree that it is dangerous and dirty.
I sent it to John's email.
I would remove them from Motel 6 brand association, as it is a terrible place. Okay, now I want to read one last one. This is from recent September this year by a family. Won't be back until it's cleared out. She liked the location, lots of restaurants near, right off the freeway, had a fridge and microwave. Disliked way too much illegal activity going on there. All hours of the night, especially on weekends, not a family place. I was scared to let my kids go outside. Paid way too much for a facility with all that going on right outside, and there was no notice of pool being not open, but there wasn't even any water in it. Okay, so that's a sampling. I'm just ashamed to have this be here in Claremont, trading on Claremont's reputation. Okay, then the third issue here is the deterioration of buildings and landscaping. And this was really hot at the Architectural Commission just recently on 10/26. The owner had approved cutting down 12 tall eucalyptus trees that provided screening to the backyards of the residential homes to the east. A former code enforcement officer had previously written that they should not cut down those trees. They were part of the original design. The owner had shut off all water to not only the lawn, but 60-foot tall redwood trees. Those trees and others have died. That made a particular impact on one of the commissioners. The owner emptied the swimming pool, but it advertises with the pictures of its prior environment. When the staff was asked, when will the pool be filled? The staff replied, sometime next year. And the commissioners eventually said it should be filled immediately. The owner did not keep the trash enclosure cleaned up. Neighbors testified that rats and roaches climbed the backyard fences of homeowners, which are abutting the trash enclosure. So the Architectural Commission required the owner to correct these conditions, as well as installing parking lights that shine into neighbors' backyards from the roof. Take those out and put in lights as approved originally in the 1960s to be standing in the parking lot at low level. Okay, so how can we substantially improve these motels? We've got to realize that we now have motel owners who will spend money only on what is specifically required and what is enforced through the courts if necessary. We must not weaken our municipal code quality of life standards. We need to duplicate, in our opinion, in the Committee for Safe and Healthy Housing, duplicate the nuisance motel ordinance that has withstood legal challenge for over 3 years in Long Beach. We need to assign a dedicated staff member, specifically a police department officer, to enforce laws. We need to ensure investigation and follow through on complaints, which is what they say they are doing in Long Beach, to assemble documentation of violations of the law for use in court when necessary. Because if you do declare that a certain motel is a nuisance, then they will sue you in court, probably for being unfair. You're going to have to back up your allegation. And with this scope of work, this can't be a part-time job. We've got 3 motels involved. We also need experienced legal support. We need to contract with an experienced lawyer who's worked for cities and forced the cleanup of motels in similar condition. A lot of people have done it. It's been like LA City Attorney Mike Furr has brought many legal actions. City of Long Beach, City of Oakland. By the way, they assigned a sergeant police officer to clean up a motel right near the airport, and it was successful. They wrote up the story about that event. We cannot be afraid of defending the city in court after proper code and law enforcement. We have no one with that experience in Claremont. So I think that's behind our staff's talking about always doing things in a cooperative manner. They're hoping for voluntary compliance, but we've tried it for a year and it hasn't happened. Okay, there's one last issue that has arisen that is not related to trafficking. And that is, our city has allowed the Knights Inn to turn into a regional homeless voucher motel without adequate services. There was no Claremont auditing of how many rooms were filled with guests with homeless vouchers. The composition of any family groups of vouchers, the agency issuing the vouchers, or the length of stays. It was started out talking about trying to find a place for maybe a mother with a child in her car in Claremont, and it ballooned from there. There have been no reports by the homeless navigator on the adequacy of support services for the homeless who've been moved into Claremont motels. We do have somebody called the homeless navigator, but he's not going into the motels to report the conditions there. There was no Claremont auditing of the health conditions in the rooms with no maid service. We had a report that Pomona referred someone there, and they reported back that the bathroom had mold in it. So the question is, what's Claremont doing about it? The Knights Inn has violated the municipal code that states that motel guests must have another address. That's the historic municipal code for Claremont. And they must limit their stay to 60 days in any half year. So the proposed ordinance is not the answer. It doesn't yet add any investigation and enforcement procedures that will convince motel owners that the municipal codes will be enforced any more than they have been in the past. Our committee asked Claremont to simply duplicate the nuisance motel ordinance implemented in the city of Long Beach. It's been successful for over 3 years. It sets up an enforcement team with powers to declare a business a nuisance and then recommend the cancellation of their operating permit if they do not correct the problems. So when the nuisance motel ordinance is initially passed, it doesn't say any one place is a nuisance. It just said, if you are a nuisance, or if we get complaints, we will investigate them. And if they are too substantial, we will declare you a nuisance. Then we will tell you how to fix it. And if you don't, we may pull your operating permit. Now, separately, the proposed ordinance, I call it a Trojan horse ordinance, transforms our municipal code from allowing 0 homeless vouchers in our motels, saying that everybody has to have an address elsewhere, to 100% in any motel in town. Because what they do is they simply eliminate that requirement that anybody has to have another address. They also eliminate the requirement that you can only stay 60 days and a half year. So that you can go there for 30 days, check out for a day, come back, and virtually live there. That can, in fact, Pomona pulled over one person and the address on his driver's license was a Claremont motel. So our committee discussed this issue of providing some housing for a few homeless folks, but believe that no more than 10% of the rooms in any motel or hotel should be allowed to house homeless voucher guests. The reason is that when you get more, you're going to chase away the traveling public and cause any motel to become what the Knights Inn became. And you saw it in guest reviews. They said they came in, they paid, then they went in and looked around, turned right around, and demanded their money back. So what the Knights Inn became was either people on vouchers or people who are there because, yes, there are prostitutes there as well for crime, or empty rooms. So we believe that the removal of any prohibitions to voucher motels must be a separate city council decision after that specific item is placed on the agenda and not buried in what is supposedly going to help clean up our motels. So my last slide, thank you for bearing with me. We need support. There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of meetings. Tuesday of next week, City Council is going to consider the appeal of Motel 6 to reverse the decision by the Architectural Commission on its landscaping. Tuesday the following week, there's a major event, a community listening session in the Padua room at the Hughes Center, 6 p.m. And the commissioners will be invited there, but they won't be able to speak. It'll be a Brown Act concern. So they can listen, but there won't be a discussion by the commissioners. So I am hoping that people who hear this presentation and know about these issues will go there. This is essential on the 29th and speak on any of these issues that resonate with you. We South Claremont neighbors have spoken to the Police Commission, the Planning Commission, the Architectural Commission, and directly to the staff. However, the proposed staff ordinance that was suddenly online, 5 days before the Planning Commission meeting, has not yet been changed in any way. There is absolutely nothing we have said that has caused them to alter what is going to be considered version 3.0 that was presented to the Planning Commission. You can also talk offline with your city council person or your commissioners why the current proposed ordinance contains many problems. And that it seems to you, if you agree, that a nuisance motel ordinance proven through the legal process is the sure way to simply sort of load the hammer. Motels will see the nuisance motel ordinance go in and they'll realize these folks are serious. So we better start changing things before they actually, this leads to shutting us down. And then finally, in January, February, there's going to be a joint Planning Commission and Police Commission meeting where they will see a staff presentation and take official action on it. And that will be Claremont's new ordinance. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Jim. And of course, lots of, I hate to use the word good information because it's not really good, but it's thought-provoking, perhaps, information. And I think you've outlined the seriousness of the activities in South Claremont very well. I know I personally had one question. I know that in the very first chart, technically your second slide, you talked about the difference between North and Central Claremont apartment buildings and South Claremont buildings. Maybe for those of us that are in here that aren't sure, what did you use as the dividing line between South Claremont and Central/North Claremont?
The railroad tracks.
Okay, so the railroad tracks that are just above Arrow Highway?
Well, they're just north of the Keck.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, as you go up Cambridge, when you cross the tracks. The senior housing just south of the tracks in downtown, we did not count as in the South Claremont properties. But otherwise, is pretty much south of the railroad tracks.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
And the apartments that had the biggest problem were on San Jose and then out on the west side of Arrow.
And would you say that those motels, would you say that they carried the majority of the South Claremont hotel issues was mostly isolated in that pocket of what is it, it's the Knights Inn and Motel 6, right?
Okay, so the second chart had to do with apartments, right?
Okay,
apartments
yes.
with 10 units or more. And so the worst one was located, it's called Claremont Cottages. And one of the things that got the city council behind us is we took pictures of what was inside. And at the time, it was interesting. The city staff believed that they could not leave the public sidewalk and walk into an apartment complex, that was private property. They just didn't even go in there. And so we showed pictures of what was in there. And so that was right on San Jose, and it's very close to the Knights Inn. You know, it's 2 properties over to the west of the Knights Inn.
Interesting. And I know that you said that you had someone that kind of had some firsthand experience at the Knights Inn. Can you elaborate a little bit more on what they saw, or if they're in here, if they would like to chime in, they're more than welcome to do so. But if you or them can elaborate sort of on what you saw or what the situation was, I think it'd be interesting to know how that was presented.
So Vicky, will you raise your hand and let Joe unmute you, or if you can do it yourself?
I did unmute myself. Does that mean I am unmuted?
You are. Yes, you're good to go.
Well, I do volunteer work with Claremont Meals on Wheels, and we had gotten a call from a social worker about one of the guests staying at Knights Inn, and they wanted us to start delivering meals. And I happened to deliver with another person, where one drives and then one of us gets out and goes and delivers the meals. You do have some of our volunteers who deliver by themselves, but with me, I did have a partner. When we first pulled into the parking lot, it was frightening even before we got out of the car, because there were some really rough looking people just milling around. And if you're familiar with the Knights Inn, they have their main entrance door opens to a hallway, but then the room also have sliding doors at the back. And so when you pull in, you see the sliding doors and the backs of the rooms, and just lots of junk, had accumulated on almost all of these patios. But I did go inside the building. I was looking for the motel room that she was staying in. When I knocked, at that time, when I went into the hall, there were no lights. It was completely dark. It was hard to even see the numbers on the rooms. But when I knocked on the door, it took her a while to come to the door, and she opened it just a crack. And I said I was with Meals on Wheels and we had her meal. And she said, well, can you wait just a minute? And basically what she was having to do was to move all the trash around in the room so she could even open the door wide enough for me to pass the food to her. When she did get the door open, the trash was almost up to her waist, filling the room. So where she was sleeping or a table where she would be putting the food down, I couldn't even see that from the door. So she did take the food, and then I left. But it was very disconcerting to think that someone was living in a hotel room that obviously didn't become that bad overnight.
Right.
So who knew how long she had been in there, or even if that was all of her stuff, or maybe from a previous tenant, you don't know. But when I went back to Claremont Meals on Wheels, and I was talking to some of our board members, they really felt that that wasn't a safe place to ask our volunteers to return to deliver meals. So that was our experience there.
Wow.
Vicki, don't you think there's another aspect of it also, which is that when we deliver meals, we want to assure that if the person doesn't finish the meal, that there's refrigeration and someplace so that they don't eat something that has been sitting around a long time and could make them sick. So that's another aspect of it.
That is a good point. And like I just said, I couldn't even see a table or a bed where she could even go sit and eat.
Wow.
So I'd like to add that there are other elements of the new proposed ordinance, and they talk about the responsibility of the motel. And they say when a person starts 30 days, that it will be clean. But then they don't talk about ever going in there to change the sheets or clean the bathroom. They say there will be, and what in Motel 6, they actually say that if you stay there for longer term, I don't have it here to quote. Yes, I do. Okay, daily housekeeping for guests staying multiple nights may be limited. So they tell you right there, we're not coming in your room. And so then we're thinking, okay, we're putting homeless people in there and nobody's going in. So that's not the Claremont way. I mean, if we're going to house, even if we know we're going to house people, we need services to be assured there. And I personally, it's a Claremont responsibility. It's a Claremont motel. So even if it were some other agency like Tri-City or something providing the voucher, we need to periodically, with our own housing navigator, in my opinion, visit these people and see what the condition is and whether their support is coming through for them.
Yeah, you're exactly right. It's interesting. It's interesting in my younger days when I was in college and working part-time jobs to help pay for things. I was in the food service industry. I worked in multiple restaurants as server and all sorts of stuff. And I could not believe at the thoroughness that the county health inspector would inspect any restaurant that I worked at. I mean, even down to basically a glorified snack bar. I worked at a glorified snack bar here in Claremont. And it was, kudos to the health inspector. That's what he should be doing. But just to think that basically a glorified snack bar that had no raw food being prepared, we didn't cook any raw food. We were rigorously judged, I guess, to make sure that we're in compliance with all the various health codes. And it's so surprising to me that a business like a hotel or motel, in this case a motel, seems to just get away with not, or the city or the county just saying, we're not concerned with the way that people are living in a business fashion, when it's a health violation if you have a bottle of 409 on a counter in the back of a restaurant. That's a violation. You will get 5 points deducted from your score. I remember that because I left a bottle of 409 on the table and the health inspector said, you just lost 5 points. So it's amazing to me that they can be so strict and regulatory in that fashion. And then, as you mentioned, Jim, we're putting fairly vulnerable people, homeless people that are trying to recover, get back on their feet, into these predicaments, into these situations, and then basically putting them in the room and then patting ourselves on the back and saying, hey, job well done. Look, we got one more off the street into housing. And that's only one facet. That's just one tiny facet of what the issue that they're actually facing.
I'd like to add one other thing. Vicki and I, as a pair, we went over to Knights Inn prior to the Planning Commission meeting, and we found dramatic changes in early September. All the lights were working in the hallway. The carpets had been cleaned. There were 2 maids on one floor, 1 maid on another. And Vicki said, what happened? This is amazing. And it turned out that somebody had made a complaint. And I had been actually called by the Vice Mayor of Pomona. I think we might have been I don't know who made the complaint, but they inspected early September. And so it's possible to clean these up, but only when it's required.
Right.
And when we personally, as private citizens, made a complaint, nothing was done. They promised. So therefore, I think it is the city has the responsibility to call in LA County Public Health and say we need more frequent, or we need to follow up on a complaint. And if they say we're too busy, I've been told by a hotel operator that many cities hire their own inspectors, their own certified inspectors who go through, through the motels in addition to LA County.
Yeah, and that seems like that would make a lot of sense. We do have a question. This is kind of an interesting thing from Michael J. that's here with us. And Jim, if you have this answer, or if anybody else can speak to this, feel free to chime in. Is the fire department able to check the sprinklers in the hotels? And part two, if I missed it, are there any social workers from Claremont PD or elsewhere that do routine outreach for these girls? I think specifically referencing the female prostitutes. The fire department thing is very interesting. I feel like that's one of those kind of maybe one of those kind of loopholes where they can say, hey, we're the fire department, got to come in, make sure that your sprinklers are working, and you got to open up every room, and we got to do a little test or check and see what goes on. Jim, do you know if about either of those items?
I do not know specifically about motels and fire department. That's all. I can't speak to that.
Mm-hmm. And do you know if there are any social workers from Claremont PD or elsewhere for that matter that do any type of routine outreach to the sex workers and the prostitutes that are in that area?
Well, okay, so let's talk about that, because we had a presentation by Project Sister and the police departments in Pomona and Claremont in the patio room, and then similarly to the police commission. And they described the fact that the women are very controlled by the pimps. Yes. And so they're told you don't talk to anybody. And if the pimp isn't watching them himself, there's actually other sidekicks of the pimp, other women who supervise the younger girls. And if they're talking to anybody, such as Project Sister or anybody else that indicates maybe they're gonna flee this situation, it gets reported to the pimp and they're punished severely. So it used to be, it still is right now, that a policeman can come up and say, who are you? And they are required to answer, because when they are soliciting for sex, that is against the law as of right now. And so anyone watching that interaction knows, okay, the girl has to talk to the guy. And particularly if they bring them to the police station, then there is a place where they can talk privately and nobody knows what they say. But starting in January 1st, very, very wrong-headed, in my opinion, a law started by Senator Weiner from San Francisco said that it will no longer be a crime to solicit for sex. And that means that the pimps can say to the girls, if a policeman asks you your name, you don't have to tell him anything. I want you to turn around and walk off. And so it actually shuts off their ability to speak to anyone who cares about offering them resources to escape the life they're living. And so it makes more of a victim of them than they are right now, in my opinion.
Wow.
So yes, I mean, people can try, but the young people, they will act as though they're having fun because that's their job.
Can I say something?
Please, go ahead, Sue.
Okay. Yeah, one of the police officers even told us that and it was a female police officer from Pomona, that often, not often, but when the woman wants to get out, she'll say to the police officer, please handcuff me, so it looks like I'm not going voluntarily. So I believe that if we wanted to really help women escape, that we would need to have setups like you do with domestic violence, where you have safe houses up and down the state where people can escape to. But a lot of these women have been abused, and they are being abused, continue to be abused. I want to tell you that I worry about the youth of our community also, and I'll tell you why. When we did our demonstration, there was a woman at the demonstration whose 16-year-old son had been trafficked at Motel 6. And he had, one of the things that she said to me was that she was concerned that he was, at the time that he was there, that he was recruiting other young folks to prostitution. And so he was right there in our community, She was pretty sure he was recruiting. By the way, this 16-year-old boy died of a fentanyl overdose 3 weeks before she spoke to me. So she had been trying to get him out of the situation at our Motel 6. She lived in Ontario. So that's, and then other things have happened. Another way I'm concerned is kids seeing things. And moms, if you live towards our part of town, if you go on next door, which I don't do very often, but sometimes we'll find out about a thread going on or conversation going on. And moms have been talking about how can they compassionately tell their little children and be compassionate about it, why someone is scantily dressed and the walking around the streets. One of our neighbors testified at the Planning Commission meeting that she was at Oakmont School. And Oakmont School is the northernmost school. It's not Vista, but it's the northernmost school in our district, just south of the railroad tracks. And she was at the kindergarten door, and there was a prostitute who came by whose entire buttocks were showing in her pants. She had them cut out. And the kindergarten kids were about to be dismissed. And she was horrified, that they would see this, and what do I say then to my 5 or 6 year old son or daughter? And because they noticed, and so but she was fortunate because the woman got into a car and left right before the children got out of the door. So and then Nona Terry, who's on this call, if she wants to speak up, she's also seen concern about what is happening, what could potentially be happening, especially at San Antonio High School, which is very close to these hotels and is a high school where a lot of vulnerable children, young folks, are going to school. So
yeah, that's a really good point with the proximity to, that was one of my first thoughts. Was obviously it's very difficult to try to explain to a first, second, or third grader why there's a prostitute soliciting on the sidewalk. That's difficult, but it's almost like who's more vulnerable, a second grader or a 17-year-old? I don't know. I mean, it's one is a difficult conversation. The other could be, ruining their life for the foreseeable future if they choose to make a wrong decision and make a bad choice. And I mean, what's the proximity there? It's half a mile away at best. That's crazy.
Well, it's real close.
Yeah. Sonia, I see that you have your hand up. Go ahead, chime in, please.
Well, that what you're talking about, Joe, is one of the things that Project Sister is working on, is getting into the high schools and letting young people know the warning signs of, being, kind of roped into this lifestyle. A lot of foster kids are particularly vulnerable, and kids that are going through like a lot of emotional trauma at home, they're vulnerable. And she said that they have, I don't know, like courses or talks that they like to give at high schools, warning these young people. I think, and you guys can correct me, but I think they said the average age of one of these gals getting into this lifestyle is 15. It's heartbreaking.
It's 13 actually.
13.
Wow.
So it's really heartbreaking how young. And I think it was one of the Pomona PD people said that the one, they had a gal, she needed to get back because her kids were in the room, So you've got this whole thing is an issue that has so many, it's like an octopus. there's so many different parts to it that need attention. And I think that's what we've all been learning, that it's so, it's heartbreaking, and I hate that it's happening in our wonderful town of Claremont. And I think this is, you know, what we're doing and trying to get the motels cleaned up. It's just one of the tools that we can use. I'm really so upset about this loitering law. It really ties PD's hands for having a way to reach out. We'll have to get creative and find other ways to be able to reach these gals and guys. There's some guys like that young man Sue was talking about.
So one thing I think absolutely everyone in the town will agree is that we need to go after the traffickers and the pimps. They are committing a felony, so that is a crime. And so we need to be able to find ways to prove a case against them. And it may take a lot of, undercover work and but it's a battle and we just have to engage in it. Lastly, I want to say that there's a YouTube on Lisa Ling. She's a reporter. She talked about sex work and she talked about its modern day slavery, and that street prostitution, such as we have here in Claremont, is the most dangerous job in America.
Yeah, I believe it. I really do. I do. Michael, I see you have your hand up. If you want to go ahead, and I see you're unmuted. Go ahead.
Okay. This is one problem to think about now. You're going to be putting up 800 low-income housing right on Indian Hill, 800 units. And if these laws aren't even going to be effective, that's going to be a great place for these people to get in. They'll actually have a room on premises right then and there, probably gambling and everything else. That's right around the corner. This step is the minor compared to the potential of 800 high density units, not only for COVID and diseases, but for everything that's going on now. Actually, they should never build that kind of stuff in Claremont if Claremont is really interested. To contain in one little area and allow a big area of exposure to exist is really stupid. And Claremont could back out of that anytime they want instead of building it. They didn't even have to pay for the study or anything. The railroad gave them $400,000 to help do the plans. It's not like we're losing millions of dollars if we don't, get out of this thing and get smart and control what was allowed to be built. Someday those hotels can be demolished. We don't have to sell that. We don't have to do that kind of stuff. We allowed it. Just like we allowed at Howard Johnson's for about 20 years. They said we couldn't control it because they had a back door to the rooms because the parking lot was in the back. Well, they could have boarded up that door in 5 minutes and plastered in a wall, and you only could get in from the front door from a courtyard. At least they'd know what was going on, but they didn't. So I think the city has had a lot of looking the other way in the past, and if they don't look forward even into this 800 high room project, they're not looking forward to what's coming down the road. So we got to get with it is what it really amounts to, and think forward for the whole entire city.
Yeah, good points, Michael. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And yeah, you're exactly right. It can be concerning, and anytime you start to raise the density level of living, there can be unintended consequences, and that could certainly be one of them. I know, Brian.
It's not only can be, it will be.
Yeah. Brian, I know you had your hand up. Go ahead, and if you have something to add.
I'll go ahead and let Mike finish.
Okay, Mike, do you have any other points?
No, you can't be naive about this. It's really something serious to think about. And you could show what you're made of if you get back and say, we don't want this high density. It's bad enough where it is. We can't even control low density of 30 or 40 units or 10 units.
Right.
So
and on top of that, Michael,
who are you going to have handle that? Are you going to do it for us personally and get involved in that? Or are you going to pass it on?
Are you referring to me personally?
Yeah, personally. It seemed like you wanted to shine it off a little bit. It's pretty serious, unless you don't think it's serious.
No,
You-
it's absolutely serious.
Okay, well, do something. You're in a good position. I'm too old for this right now. I'm 85, so I'm saying what I gotta say. It's easy to see right through all this nonsense. So show what you got, buddy. Okay?
Thanks, Michael. Go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, along that same line, I understand where Mike's coming from. Just to give some of them an idea, when I did retire, I went to work for Tri-City Mental Health to help them out on a number of situations. Anyway, I was with them a couple of years and I learned a lot about the homeless and what's going on with trafficking and everything else through Tri-City. After that, I just moved on in my life, but I stuck with, after that, I really had an experience at David and Margaret. You want to talk about firsthand, Sonia, that is head on. I've been on the board over there now a little over 20 years, and it's absolutely amazing what some of those girls go through. You can't ask them, but I get so close to some of them that they'll start talking, and my wife will be with me and do the same thing. But I'll tell you, when you take what I'm leading up to is what you're going through with Motel 6. These girls are going to be a part of it if something isn't done at that end. Anyway, I can think of, just off the top of my head over the years, but I could think of 3 that came to us through the county, and I would almost bet that they were into trafficking, because one was 12, 2 were 13. They've been in the streets a year and a half. Their mother had died of overdose, and the father, 2 out of the 3, the fathers were molesting them. And from that, and I know they're going right into the system. And that's a big part of what I try to do, is catch them before they get there, get them off of the floor, at least get them in a chair and talking. To me, it's very important. And I'm very involved in it. And Sue knows out at the foundation, that's my main thing out there, is foster children and helping the young women to come up with a better life than what they've got. But it all leads up to exactly what you guys are talking about tonight at Motel 6 and King's Inn. That's a whole, I mean, there's no question about it. And you're right, something needs to be done. What? I'm not sure. I just know that if something isn't done pretty soon, it's going to get worse and worse, and it's just going to deteriorate. Somebody will end up going in and trying to bulldoze the thing down. But I really have an appreciation for the young ladies that are out there trying to, and I'm just working with, I was with 6 today. Absolutely, 6 of them today. And I'll tell you, I look at the ages of the people that are on this screen. You need to talk to some of these young girls. It'll be a wake-up call for you. It's sad to see some of them going through what they're going through, but I'll toot my own horn later. Jim, I really appreciate what you brought up today, because it hits a nail right on the head with the young ladies. And I'm on Leroy Boys Home. I'm on the board up there, but it's a different setup with David and Margaret. These young ladies, it's a miracle they're still alive. Believe me. I'll shut up now.
That's Brian. Thank you, Brian. Appreciate that. Well, I think, Jim, you've provided so much insight and so much wonderful information. Again, it's not
Definitely
not happy information by any stretch of the imagination, but the details that you've shared, and I'm so glad to see that the committee that you're a part of has made it somewhat of an impact on some of the apartment level crime, and hopefully we can see the same decrease in activity in the issues with our
Joe?
hotels. Yes, go ahead, Brian.
I meant to, you guys got me all fired up about the ladies, so I started talking about them, but I had a question for Jim.
Oh, go ahead.
Jim, the same report that you just read to us and the way you put it together, have you presented that to any of the committees personally? Or has the city manager ever seen the PowerPoint that you just showed us?
Yes, the report on the apartments is routine. It used to be every half year, and right now it's every year. But it is data. That data is in the police department computer. Every single incident is in there, and it takes somebody to dig it out and make sense of it. And remember, I was saying that one thing that's critical is to get one person who's going to be waking up every morning. How can I fix this motel situation? And I think it should be a police department member, as Aaron Fate was. That's how we met Aaron Fate when we were first tackling the apartment issues. And he was a sergeant at the time. And he had all these skills of being able to dig out information, have total access to all this confidential information about individuals and cases. And yet able to work with the community and the rest of the staff. And if we could find somewhere in our police department, someone like him in the future who would grab this and run with it, it would make it so much more effective than for people maybe in code enforcement or whatever, thinking, well, this is just a little part of my day, and it's just sort of doesn't get addressed like a full-time person would be addressing it. We wouldn't have to guess how many voucher people were in every motel. We shouldn't have to guess that. That it should be public information, to the city. And so that's number one. We need some people who do not have that assignment yet.
Oh, that's why I was asking Jim if you had presented it to them personally. I know they could gather more than what the information you just presented, but I guess what I was thinking was today we've got 29 people that are on the screen watching it. You're going to have to take this show on the road, a PowerPoint presentation, and what you've got here is, to me, trafficking 101. And I think it's a good start with the PowerPoint presentation that I just saw, because it moved me and it made me think about a number of different things. So what I'm suggesting is somehow maybe take it on the road, and maybe even through Active Claremont with Joe, maybe there's a way that we could make sure that not only this video is going to get out, but something that we can do to even push it even further down the road to where like during election time, they have coffees. I'm just saying you need to go into a neighborhood, almost like a neighborhood watch program, and present it to, if you presented it to the same size group you got here, you got 29 on here. So if you had a coffee and you had 10, they're going to go out and talk to 10 more. And pretty soon people are going to start thinking about, hey, we got to really do something down here. So just a thought, but I really liked your presentation. I did.
So can I say, Joe?
Please, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, just to follow up, I agree with you, Brian, that people need to know more about it. And I think also that we need to be trying to find a way, as Michael J, I think I know who that is concerned. What do we do about the women? I think that we need to start the same kind of movement that we had during the domestic violence movement and the sexual assault movement, which allows women to get out of the situation, should they so please, and be able to be safe in getting out of the situation. I also think a lot of people missed a great part of Jim's presentation. And I'm wondering if you think you could, if they can't watch the first part of the video, Jim, if you could make it available, your PowerPoint, to the folks who are on this presentation, and give them your email email, and that you could you send it to them?
Yeah, if Jim sends me the PowerPoint, and obviously I've got Jim's email, typically, as you probably know, Sue, and other members on the call, I'll do what I call an in case you missed it email. And typically, well, with the Thanksgiving holiday, it's going to kind of mess things up a little bit. But typically I try to send out a recap email. And in that email, I'm happy to send out this presentation. And I'm also happy to make a mention of Jim's email if they want to get in touch with him and learn more or participate.
And also to the people, there are folks who are on this call who I see, I'm not sure they are members. What if they're not a member of Active Claremont? Then how do they contact you if they happen not to be a member of Active Claremont?
So they can they can email, if they do board@activeclaremont.org, it'll go to every board member. So that's probably the easiest one. If they change board out to president, that will go to me for the next about 6 weeks. So that's the best way to contact us. And but yes, the email will go to everybody that's on the list, which is members, and there are some people that aren't members, but it's about 98% members on that email list. So anybody who's not a member, if you do want a copy of it, you can either put your email into the chat here, or you can contact me or email me after the presentation. We'll make sure you get the material that you need.
And keep in mind, our dues are only $10.
$10, and
Family
what
can
a
have
value!
$15.
What a
So
value!
we're not going to break you, but we could sure use the help.
Mm.
Sonia, did you have a remark?
That's coming from the treasurer.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I hope all of you and get as many people as you can to show up at the November 29th meeting up at the Hughes Center, because that will make an impact. The different, as Jim was saying, a couple of the commissions will be there, city staff. And one of the conclusions we came to in all our conversations is if the codes that we have now would be enforced, a lot could be done. And the as Jim was mentioning on the 3.0 ordinance that they're suggesting, it really guts some of the good stuff we have in our code now. And so it's unacceptable. And I think they're getting the message. I don't know. I hope so. But you know, this is the right thing to be working on, you guys. I keep saying it's a righteous cause, and it is in numerous ways. And it's you know, things, you know, we think we need to help these gals. We need to stop the drug trafficking that's going on, the sex trafficking that's going on. And it's hurting, you know, as a byproduct, it's hurting Claremont and hurting our reputation. And it's sad as a business person to see that nonsense going on. And I don't like that. Anyway, but so if you can come on the 29th, please be there and bring your friends and neighbors so that they can be learning about all the stuff that we have been learning.
Yeah, that's a great point, Sonia, and it does make a difference. Attending and a show of force of people. I know that impacts hyper local government like city council, commissions, things like that. So you're right. You know, a room full of 8 people does not have the impact that a room full of 40 people has. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. And yeah, that meeting will be taking place next week. I have a question here in the chat.
I'd like to add, just, it is really true. I've seen it in many commission meetings. People, you don't have to be an expert. You can just say, I'm really concerned about this area, right? You can stay within what you know, and it really makes an impact, because when other people get up in numbers, it's almost like the people with the side with the more people tend to be listened to. It's very elementary. I don't know why. I don't know why the message, we've shared it. I don't know why they haven't learned it already, but we got to keep sharing it, and we got to keep bringing new voices so that those who are directing the city realize that this is a widespread concern. This is not just a south of the freeway. I actually had someone tell me, I hate to say it, I had somebody tell me, well, if we could just keep it south of the freeway, it'd be okay with me.
Yeah.
I mean, that is honestly, that's what we're dealing with. And elsewhere in Claremont, if we can just keep it south of the tracks, that's okay with me. Anyway, everybody has their idea of their neighborhood, and we have to band together to support each other. We are one Claremont. We want to be proud of the quality of life that everything's done well everywhere in town to the best of our ability. And that is an aspirational thing. So those of you particularly who don't live south of the tracks, South Claremont, your voices they'll take note. Oh my gosh, here's somebody from where I know where, North Claremont, they're concerned. So I guess we better get on this.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I even wanted to refrain in the email invite that I sent out. I tried to stray away from the issues in South Claremont, because that's an inaccurate statement. And it's not true to the whole scope of things, because it's also an issue for North Pomona. It's also an issue for the rest of Claremont. It's also an issue for anybody that lives east or west. I mean, these people are coming from all over the place. And it's also a trigger, as Michael kind of alluded to moments ago. It's a growing problem that can mushroom. So to think that it's, oh, if we just contain it to one spot, that's okay. That to me, that's an excuse. We have a couple of questions. I'm going to try to get to everybody. We have someone that from Alexandria who asked quite a while ago, and this is probably a good question for Jim. Will there be any more rallies to raise awareness anytime soon? I think Alexandra is alluding to the previous one that you guys had about, was it about a week or maybe 2 weeks ago now at this point?
It was on August 27, and we had 57 people there, and that's where we met people. My wife talked about meeting this mother who'd lost her son at the age of 16. People came together who were really, where this issue was just critical to them. We had hoped that we would have another rally where people from Pomona would join us, because of course, prostitution has been a long time concern in Pomona. And for a long time, we've been told that the women staying in your motels, Claremont, come down and they do tricks in Pomona and on streets in front of our homes, and so you are part of our Pomona problem, right? And I've been ashamed of that we wouldn't consider that that's a big deal just because the sex acts were primarily happening in front of Pomona homes. So we thought there'd be a reason to come together, but that alliance didn't happen. They never said, well, yeah, we'll have our own march and come up and meet at the old Greyhound station and say, this is a combined Pomona Claremont problem. So frankly, our hands have been full just trying to deal with commission issues and proposals by the city staff. But we could do it again, of course, if we see if that's what it takes to get the word out. But I think we did get good courier coverage. I have to thank them for that, rally and for some of the other issues. So this is something where the courier does support us in addressing it.
That's good. That's good. That's a good survey. Michael, I'll get to you. I got one more question and then we'll go to you. From Bob, Bob asked a little bit, and that's a good segue into this. Any news organizations that could credibly help get the word out? And I know that you mentioned the Courier. Has there been any talks with the Inland Valley Daily Bulletin, LA Times, anything like that?
Not that I've been part of locally. We were contacted by Bloomberg News, who, and the reason is the Motel 6s are creating this kind of problem in many, many places across the country. And so he was planning on writing an article about how that brand has brought in problems that are beyond the local police force's ability to deal. So we are not alone, but he did make the statement that we probably have more action going on right now here in Claremont than anywhere else he knows about.
Wow. That's interesting. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay. If we listed every code and every law that's being broken right now and put it in the Courier, we'll pay our own ad. It could be a full page. Somebody's got to take responsibility for not enforcing the existing codes and laws, and it could be sanitation, firefighting, all kind of things and then we go back and find out what the codes are and rules for the people that give the vouchers. They might be a terrible thing. They're just dumping people, and they have to have rules. I think we have to nitpick every rule and regulation possible and beat them with what we know are actual violations, and then publicize all these together and say, come on, Claremont, get your council, get your police department, get together and start going down there day by day. you don't have to wait for some group from the outside, some association of people that do good. We actually have rules and regulations, just like Sonia said, and we're not enforcing them. We could pay for, if 30 of us put in $25, we'd have a full page. Ad in the Courier, maybe run it 2-3 times. That would get the whole city reading it and talking about it more than we're going door to door and stuff like that. Then when we get that kind of initiative going amongst ourselves, you can just call anybody at the LA Times. There are people come out here for free, like they did when you did the other deal down at the Motel 6 or that other place. We need to do some public action, and I think a big ad with the right kind of information could do a miracle. But we have to itemize all the potential things they're doing, everything they're doing wrong, and the police should be able to help you with that. The fire department, anywhere we could get information of their wrongdoings, and put that list in the Courier, full page ad. The whole city will read it. They'll be all aware of what's going on, and they'll have the feeling they're next. They'll be doing they'll find a way to get into a house up there in some area where they'll have 5 or whatever. So that's one way to get some action quick, very quick. We do it ourselves. We don't wait for other people. We find out what's wrong, itemize it, put a news bulletin out in the Courier of what's going on in our own town and what we need to do. I think a lot of it, the city council doesn't, I think they're part of the deal. The current crop in there, it's south of the tracks. That's why we have 800 high density units south of the tracks, 200 across the street. They wanted Larkin Park, they got something going on, high density. Down at the Ramada Inn, taking over the tennis courts to put in 65 so-called hotels. That's right in their own neighborhood. They probably have the pimps live there. Who knows? Let's get together and use what's existing already, and go and get our people we elected and paying for it to start doing the job. You don't have the power, and I don't have the power to go enforce anything. They do, but we have to put it on their shoulders.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. So Russ, I see your hands up. I'll get to you. We had another question coming through chat that we have about 4 or 5 questions to get through. Let me make sure we're on the right spot here. So Alan made a kind of a comment / question. Could there be presentations like tonight's at civic clubs like Rotary, Kiwanis, University Club, Women's Club? Jim, have you? Well, I think that kind of goes with what Brian was saying about taking the show on the road. Jim, has you or your organization approached any of those other organizations or clubs in town to present this information?
Well, we haven't yet. This wasn't really ready till 5 hours ago.
Well, you did a great
So
job, Jim, and you should take it on the road. And I agree with Brian.
If people here feel that there's enough value that they want to bring it to their particular club, and pitch it, that'd be wonderful. So all we need is people who would represent us and say this is something worthwhile for our particular association.
So Sonia, you and I can do Kiwanis, can't we?
Excellent. I love it. I love to see it. Russ, I got one more question from chat, then we'll go to Russ. Ali asked, other counties like Riverside and San Bernardino are giving vouchers to these homeless people. Why is that permitted? Should they not stay within their own county? These vouchers are being dispersed by other counties and they're being cashed here in LA County, specifically our 3 motels in Claremont. I don't know if anybody has some more information regarding the homeless and the voucher system. I know that from my limited experience, and I've been pretty active with the Larkin Place development, as some of you know, since the onset of that almost a year ago now. It's been a while, time flies. And it seems like it's a very tricky slope. There's some, as you probably know, housing that's one of those categories where discrimination is a very hot button issue. And I think some of the issues that some of the proponents for the voucher system were saying, well, how can you tell someone where
Hey,
they
Joe,
can
you
go.
got Russ's hand is up over there.
Yeah, I'll get to Russ.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. So I think that's part of the problem is that when you start telling them where they can and cannot go when you're supposed to offer some services, I understand the question, and that's one of those questions where, what is the right answer? Should they perhaps stay in their own counties? Yeah, perhaps. And then the other flip side is as well, if a human being needs a house, what resources do you offer that you can offer? I know that there's been for some time, there's been the notion of, the buses being let out at the Pomona or the Foothill corridor in Pomona, which sees a lot of very similar issues to what we see down in the southern portion of Claremont.
Check bus 187 as it comes out Foothill from Pasadena.
Yeah, exactly. So that's a very complex issue, and the voucher thing, while it's a program that has merit, like a lot of the homeless outreach programs, the idea and the merit are there, but it always comes back to the supporting services, which we've talked about on this call alone. And you can't just offer one small facet of the total solution and expect people to be able to take that and run with it. So it's definitely a complex problem with the voucher scenario and situation. Russ, go ahead. You can unmute and you can put in your 2 cents.
Okay, you can hear me, I take it?
Yep, you're good to go.
Deal. Short suggestion. Before you go spend money to go into the courier, there is a local podcast that would love to have you guys on to voice all these views. And I'm surprised because some of the folks on the call here have been on it. And I know I've been, let's say, accused of over inviting in the past. However, I don't think I'm overstepping here. So if you, Joe, or any of you would like a turn on Claremont Speaks to voice your concerns, make your opinions known, solutions, suggestions, whatever, you're all invited.
Thank you, Russ.
Me up
Appreciate that.
at ClaremontSpeak@gmail.com, and away we go.
Can you say that
That's
one
it.
more time? Your mic cut out just for a second. I want to make sure that people do get that email address.
Sorry, it's real simple. ClaremontSpeaks@gmail.com.
Excellent.
Got it?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Russ. Appreciate that. Let me see if there's anything else here in
Hey,
chat.
Jim, you really should go on there. You can say what you want. You got as long as you want. I think I set the record on there. I had about just under 2 hours.
Joe, there's another question in there. It says, do the colleges care?
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Do the colleges care? Jim, have you heard of anything relating to the Claremont College's take or stance on this issue? I can imagine they're pleased.
That's a major question to me too. I know of someone who does and who's supportive and who follows this issue, who's in administration in the colleges. I think they should care a lot more because it's not one of those things where you want to see the worst happen and then say, oh, darn, I should have acted sooner. I mean, like I'm thinking the city staff, if we lose more businesses, like we know we lost the BC Cafe, that was a very popular restaurant, but the police said, no, we're not going to come when you call anymore. That's for somebody else to do. And he said, okay, I'm out of here. And then we lost another business there at San Jose and Indian Hill. What happens when we lose more? How much work went into building up, down there at the Auto Park Center and Super King and all that. We're so proud of it, all that work. And now we're putting that at risk. It's just beyond me. And the colleges, I'll tell you one situation. We all have personal stories. My daughter, actually, she lives in Berkeley. One of her family friends came up and the husband and wife brought their daughter to check out colleges, not just Claremont, but in this region. And they came to our house for breakfast because they were friends. Well, they stayed at Motel 6. And so they told me what it was like. So they were in that room and they heard the door being knocked on. It was like, 12:30 at night. She gets up, go to the door. Oh, it's the door next door. It's not her door, it's the door next door. But he says, oh, I forgot my key. So anyway, there were people who forgot their key knocking on that door next to them night after night. And, they considered themselves very robust people who like to camp and all that kind of stuff. They figured they could take it, but they were absolutely shocked. So how many people are we inviting under the Claremont name? They just assume Claremont college community's got to be good. And then they come here and they get that situation. And whether they write a guest review or not, it's like, holy mackerel. So I think the colleges should be worried. Even though the colleges purposely don't put these motels on the list of where to stay for all their parents when they come. I mean, they're quoting motels out there, and way away from us, and not these. So I think they should weigh in. I think it has quite an impact on all of us, actually. I already know of 2 families that have moved because they just figure the city's not going to do anything. So we got to get out of here quick. So we are on the verge of suffering a lot more economic and turmoil than if we don't get on this. And I think we can. It is not a matter of location. It is a matter of us willing to enforce our standards. The Courier just went through, what it's like down on Holt in Montclair. That's not that far away. And if you said, hey, you can come and roam around Claremont, nicer place, and nobody stops it, of course they're going to migrate here. So we have to be realistic and say we've seen enough. We're not going to be played anymore by owners who don't care, and we're not going to count on cooperation. Because there's obviously, if we can see these pimps operating on the motel, they can see them. And all they have to do is saying, we're not renting to you anymore. But they don't. And so we're going to have to apply some force to make that change.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. So we have one last question in from Jackie. We're about 30 minutes over our normal time allotment, but I think this has been extremely well worth it. And this has been one of our longer programs, but it's been very enlightening information, and I feel like the conversation's been great. So we're going to take one last question here from Jackie, and I think kind of posed for Jim, but again, if anybody has any comment, they can chime in. From Jackie, do they have these problems at the DoubleTree? And I feel like the short answer is not yet, but Jim, what do you know about that?
Well, I remember talking about these kind of problems with Andrew Benke a couple of years ago when it was first labeled a Motel 6 and we had an onslaught of the start of these problems. That was definitely the wrong move to rebrand it. And he explained that he actually cleaned up a motel near the airport. So he's got a lot of experience. And he said, for example, if they have someone in a room and they tell you they don't want maid service, that's a tell. There may be something going on in that room that they don't want to be seen. And so they do special things such as checking the trash that's coming out of the room very carefully. They don't just throw it in the bin. Is there any refuse in there that's indicating that they're doing some kind of crime or whatever? So he knows how to turn it around. What we know is what people volunteer to us. And when we step forward and we say we're talking about these things, more people come, like that poor mother from Ontario, just self-identified. So then we learn things. Or, when Bob or I mean, before you laugh, both Bob and I have been approached down there in McDonald's area. Anyway, so we learn what we learn about, but I don't pretend to have the knowledge of everything going on in the town.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Jim, I was thinking about Brian, the pimp that was in his backyard. You remember he caught on his
Yeah.
camera, and the PD knew who that guy was. And they said he was no longer allowed on the Doubletree property. So the Doubletree had dealt with him appropriately. So it's
Yeah.
that gives you a little bit of insight that he had tried to get up there, I guess, but he was no longer permitted on their property.
And previously, the owner of all three of these motels had a do not rent list. And when they determined that somebody was trouble, they said, do not rent. And so if that happened at Motel 6, for example, then that applied. The people at Knights Inn and Claremont Lodge were not to rent to that person either. So, the police could actually, they can go to the motels and say, this person is trouble. We don't want you to rent to them. Now, the motel has a choice. They can either comply or they can fight it and just pretend, that, well, he's in a room that's been rented by somebody else. We don't know who he is, that kind of stuff. So anyway, we just need to be real aggressive with everyone that we suspect is running this stuff until they feel that this is too hot for us. We need to abandon this particular place because they're too mobilized. That's what we need. We don't need to bulldoze the place, in my opinion. We just have to convince them we're not going to tolerate it being run this way. And if you line up with that guy who brings you extra money, you might just be shut down. One good thing is there was a manager who had a reputation for being very bad news at Motel 6, and he has been terminated. So that is good news. And that happened just, I think, two and a half weeks ago. So we're beginning to get the attention of corporate Motel 6, or at least the city is. I have not been part of any of these discussions.
Very interesting, to say the least. It's such a complex problem. And I think, obviously, Jim, you're on the right track. Holding, like with a lot of problems, holding people accountable is typically the first step. And when people aren't held accountable and rules aren't enforced, and especially rules and laws that pertain to health and safety of the public aren't enforced, it's not usually a good outcome ahead. So I think you're right. I think obviously the first step is enforcing those laws that we do have that are on the books and holding those accountable and being aggressive. And I also agree that there can be viable businesses. They just need to be ran in an appropriate way, and they need to have the proper oversight from the city and county officials and local law enforcement. It looks like another comment. That one's a direct. Michael, go ahead.
Okay, how does a 13-year-old girl get a voucher or a 15-year-old girl get a voucher? She can't get a voucher. And at that point, when they have a girl going in there to get a voucher, that's a great time to say, we got a better place for you. We got this other place that'll treat you right, help you get an education, and get them totally away from those pimps. What I'm getting at is there's a lot of things that if you trace the money, trace everything back, there's all kind of catch things that we can use for enforcement. You could take police cars and park them in a parking lot out there, but that really won't stop that kind of traffic. Nobody else will go there. And there's got to be rules for vouchers when you stay there. Are you really in a motel or are you in a hotel? A hotel you could, or are you in a place like that's for long-term rent? I think people we have to look at every aspect of this whole thing and find the things they're doing wrong. And what rules right now, what crimes could you say, not crimes, what rules are they breaking now? Or what laws are they breaking? It's very moment. What are they breaking? Could you name two? Name two laws that they're breaking. I don't think we know what they're breaking, really. Or else if we do know them, they're not enforcing them. So we got to first find out what's wrong. What are they doing wrong? And go after them. I don't think it's that complex. I think we're really basically lazy. We're looking for other people to do the work for us. And we need to get our people we voted for, the agencies we have, and we need to demand that they go in and look at it. And the easiest way to get the whole town into this is with a full page ad. If you want to get elected, you sure run a full page ad. Let people know how great you are. So let's let them know what's going on in this town. I think that is instant. It could be done 2 weeks from now. We could have a wonderful full page ad. We need somebody to take on that task and find out every rule that's being broken, ask all kind of questions, and we could all ask questions and bring them into a key person and compile it. So to me, that's a great way to get this thing really rolling. I mean, everything else is good too. There's nothing there, but if you want some speed on this, that full page ad is something really to think about. But list every rule that's being compromised or broken, or law. Right now, I can't say they're breaking any laws except they're doing everything bad, but nobody's enforcing it. I don't know every law that's being broken, but I sure think we can figure that out. If we can't figure that out, we're finished. They're doing
Joe,
a lot of things wrong.
Joe, just to break in, you're 9 minutes over.
That's okay. It's interesting. Ali, do you want me to, I know you sent me a direct message. Do you want me to comment on the message you sent?
I see a couple of people on there.
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay. Yeah, no, I meant it to be a general question to you specifically, but I know Claremont PD is a small PD. I know they're not, I mean, I came from LA, so we had a unit to deal with every specific problem, but and I kind of disagree with Jim and that we don't want to bulldoze a motel. I'm sorry, I'm from the perspective of you start bulldozing and then you can kind of taper off, but if you start off small, you'll never get anything done. You have to, I mean, like a lot of these police departments with LA, I mean, a location is made a public nuisance location and they start right away. They start correcting themselves. So I'm not saying go bulldoze right now, but heck, don't show your cards. Just tell them you're going to bulldoze and then go backwards. But I mean, and I don't know if the PD is so small that they don't have a specific unit to deal with vice issues, but sometimes maybe the police department can go to West LA and say, how is it that, West LA Vice Unit, how are you guys dealing with the situation? And maybe they can kind of direct the PD here, give them direction so we can go in that direction.
Yeah, that's a good thought. Obviously, I think that, yeah, like you identified, Claremont is a small town, a police department with, I think at any given time, there's, I think 3 to 4 officers on patrol at any given time. So it is small, but I think you make a good point. Perhaps there are other agencies out there that could not lend assistance, maybe physically, but maybe in theory about how Claremont PD can combat the issue. Prostitution is not new, but I think prostitution, and Jim, correct me, or Sue, or anyone, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I think prostitution to this scale here in Claremont is a little bit more than maybe I think has been present before. So I think that issue, seeking something outside of Claremont Police and going to a larger department that maybe is better versed in this type of activity, and they can say, hey, this is what we did. These are the resources we use. This is some of the tactics that we utilize to, cut out crime at problem motels or nuisance areas, like you mentioned. Yeah, and I think that some of those things can probably be done. I know that our police chief here, Aaron Fate, is very involved. I know that he pays very close attention to things. I know he meets with a lot of law enforcement officers outside of our area. And hopefully has and is planning to continue to do so to get a better directive of this current problem that we're facing. Certainly is a complex one at that.
Joe,
Yes, Sue, go ahead.
with 357, which was the bill that Jim alluded to, which says that the police can't pick up anyone for loitering, which street prostitution is basically about, then it's going to be very difficult. And Ally's right, and as a retired police person, but anyway, it's going to be very difficult for the police. But there's another aspect of that, and I think they're going to find ways to do it. And I think Ally's right. There are ways to still get to the pimps, to try to get to the Johns and the pimps. But the other thing that 357 is doing is that often the women that wanted to get out of this scene were the people that could get them out of the scene were the police, but they could not approach the police. Otherwise, the pimp would go after them. The police had to approach them. And so, like I said, the policewoman in Pomona said that there were women that said, please handcuff me, and so 357 was signed by our representative, Chris Holden, and it was supported by our representative in the Senate, Senator Anthony Portantino. So both of our representatives supported that bill, and that bill is going to be very difficult for a lot. And in fact, the organizations that assist women who are trying to get out of the prostitution were against that bill. So so it's what we sometimes do at the state level is tie the hands of the locals to take care of their own communities. And that's a sad time.
Sometimes you have to change the laws a little bit, or a new law that went in. Well, it's not new now. It's probably 5 or 6 years old, but they keep changing it. They tweak it a little bit. That's on telephones, on your cell phone. The county contract that we have with David and Margaret, you cannot take their cell phone away from them. So you talk about a perfect connection with the pimps, and that happens all the time. 3 o'clock in the morning, one of the girls are walking off campus. That's the other rule. We can't stop them. We can walk down the street wherever they're going, but we can't touch them and we can't make them come back. So what's happening? The pimp calls at 2:45. If she can't get out the front door because the supervisor won't let her, she goes back in her bedroom, breaks out the window, goes out, goes over the fence and gets with her pimp. And then she's back at 5:30. I mean, it's the rules. Never mind. I won't say anymore. The rules bug me. They're not in favor of the child, even though they think they are. I'm going to bed.
Well, I want to say thanks so much to Jim and Jim and Sue, and there's a lot of people on this call that have been active. Vicky, and I know Jennifer and Bob have done quite a bit. Thank you for your continued work on this, and obviously this is a hugely important issue that Claremont is facing, and I can only hope that more people start to grasp the seriousness of the issue. And I really, really, really hope that the whole idea of, it's South Claremont, so, and then whatever follows next is malarkey anyway. But I hope that idea, that mentality does not spread, because it's, as we've identified, it's not just South Claremont, it's all of Claremont, it's Pomona, it's our neighboring cities, it's our colleges, it's our kids, it's our community in general. So Jim, thank you for putting together such a wonderful presentation. I second Brian's thoughts that you should definitely take this show on the road. And I hope that you do. And I hope that you present this to as many people as possible, because I think that that your presentation is the type of thing that delivers a lot of information in a relatively short amount of time, and it's impactful. You can't really argue with the statistics and the numbers. And I hope that people are receptive to listening and hearing what you have to say. Again, I want to thank everyone for being a part of this call. This has been one of our longer calls, one of our longer meetings, and I think it's just been full of a lot of terrific material, wonderful comments by a lot of engaged community members, and that's what we need for issues like this. And I really appreciate all of you participating in this month's Active Claremont meeting. Again, we will not be having a membership meeting in December. It will be our membership holiday party. There is time to join Active Claremont. As my wonderful treasurer just stated, our dues are very affordable. They're $10 a year. They're $10 a year for an individual, $15 a year for a family. And if you sign up
We'll
now,
take your whole family. If you need them, it's only $15.
And if you join now, then we will still invite you to pizza in December. So there still is time. So again, thank you, everyone. We really, really appreciate you joining this call. Thanks again to Jim and Sue Keith. Really appreciate your expertise on this.
I wish you guys all a very happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Brian, and happy Thanksgiving to everybody. The recording will be up early next week. If anybody needs anything, feel free to email the board. I have the emails for the people that requested copies of this. So please give me some time. I'll try to get an email out to everyone by Monday at the latest, if not sooner. Thank you so much for joining us. Everybody have a wonderful evening and a wonderful Thanksgiving, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thanks so much.